Welcome to Business Elevated, a Utah Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity podcast. We explore the stories and strategies behind Utah's thriving economy. I'm Pete Codella. Financial stress significantly affects employees physically and mentally and can impact job performance. MoneyRight is working to change that. With various programs for organizations to choose from, this Utah-based fintech company helps employees master their money and reduce financial stress through personalized education and tools. Today we're talking with Brian Miller, founder and CEO of MoneyRight. We'll dive into how MoneyRight's programs operate, the benefits of team members' financial well-being, and Brian's experience building a fintech company in Utah. Brian Miller, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here, Pete. Thank you.
Share with our listeners what your connection is to the state of Utah. How long have you been here?
I am a born and bred Utahite. I've lived here my entire life. I'm from Utah County, a little tiny town nobody's ever heard of called Salem. But I do live out in Harriman now. I've crossed over the point of the mountain and I'm up in Salt Lake County.
What do you like to do in Utah in the great outdoors?
So for being from Utah, I'm not a super outdoorsy person. I like to go on walks, so I'll go out and walk around just on the kind of the city sidewalks in my neighborhood, but I've never been a skier or a snowboarder or a big hiker or anything. So mostly it's just enjoying the beautiful mountains from my window.
Well, let's talk about your career. You've got degrees in finance and business administration. You've been a financial coach, a client advisor, strong experience in financial services, coaching. Why don't you talk about what's led you to where you are today?
So I read my first book on personal finance when I was 11 years old. I was kind of a strange kid.
Was that part of a Scout Merit badge?
No, it was actually at the behest of my mother. So it was The 5 Lessons a Millionaire Taught Me by Richard Paul Evans, which still has a place on my bookshelf today. It's a very good read. But so I've just always been into personal finance ever since, very, very young. So I studied financial planning at UVU and absolutely loved it, had a tremendous time. But then when I started kind of taking my first steps into actually being a financial advisor, I realized that there were some issues with the way that the industry worked that I didn't really like. I wanted to be helping people in a situation more similar to my own, whereas the traditional financial services model tends to work better for people who are already quite wealthy. And so I volunteered as a financial coach on campus while I was at UVU, and we'd be working with these students on, kind of their first credit card or their first student loan or even like saving for their first child. And we'd end up like crying and having these really emotional conversations about the way they felt about their money. And I liked that a lot more than the conversations I was having with clients in the advisory space, where it was more like, how do we get 1% more from our retirement portfolio or whatever, which was still really important. But anyway, so that's kind of how I got started in the financial services side of things. But when I decided to pivot and start my own business, I did a little bit of exploring, realized I needed to learn sales. And so that's why I took a couple of different sales positions. So I read a bunch of books on that. And I really like the sales process and the science behind it and the psychology. And so that's kind of what's landed me here is I saw some needs in the financial services world. I had picked up some skills in how to sell. And so I realized I could combine it all and run my own business.
Yeah, talk about MoneyRight. What's the purpose? Why did you create it?
So MoneyRight it's about 80% of my personality. With all the books that I've read on personal finance and the experience I had in the industry, I took all those things that I had learned, because I've coached like over 1,000 individual clients at this point, helping them figure out their budget, helping them figure out like a big thing that I work on is financial psychology, like understanding your relationship with money, why you feel the way you feel. And so, I'd done that for a while and still just hadn't quite figured out, because like the people who need that type of help, who need just the basic budgeting, the basic understanding how investing works and everything, they don't really have a lot of money to pay for help with that. And so even when I was coaching, trying to help people that weren't as wealthy as your traditional financial advisor clients, I still realized that my fee was kind of getting in the way of them making progress. And so while I was studying sales, I read an article about the effects of financial stress in the workplace. And it is an incredibly expensive problem for employers in the country. And so I realized that I could take all these things that I knew about financial psychology and about personal finance, and I could sell it to businesses on behalf of their employees. So that's what MoneyRight is. It's a technology solution that combines education and financial psychology to help employees and I mean anybody, but particularly employees, make better decisions about their money.
My wife and I have taken a number of financial planning courses together in our 26 years of marriage. I remember one thing that stands out is, spending is emotional, and that money is just really tied to our emotions. And quite often people think of eating that way, but money and spending and buying is certainly that way also.
The relationship with money, it's very parallel to the relationships that we have with food or with our bodies. And, there's a lot of things that people believe because of how they were brought up. Like we call that money scripts is kind of the word, these like your internal biases about money. And so a lot of what we do is help people kind of understand those, because a lot of these beliefs aren't good or bad, but we just want to make sure people understand why they feel the way they do and how that affects the way that they're spending their cash.
Yeah, such a great point that a lot of us, you don't know what you don't know, right? And you're brought up by parents, by family members who may have a certain view of money and how it's saved or spent. And quite often we inherit it. And until you can step back and look at that and make a decision for yourself how you want to save or spend, you're just kind of stuck with the culture or the history of what's happened.
Sometimes it's not serving you in the, your best possible situation. So it's very rewarding to help people see where those beliefs are not helping them reach their goals and kind of help them square that away.
Let's go back to something else that you commented on, the financial well-being of employees. My feeling is most workers are not sharing with their colleagues financial challenges. Like their financial well-being is probably a pretty well-kept secret. So how do you see that impact in the workplace, and how do you get people to be willing to address it, to talk about it?
It's very, very difficult. Money's taboo. It's not something we want to talk about. That is changing a little bit with the younger generations. There's a little bit more of an openness to talking about situations and pay transparency and stuff, which I'm a big advocate for pay transparency, because I think that really helps the employees be in a stronger position to, you make the choices in their best interest. But financial stress as a whole is a gigantic problem for corporations across the entire world, but, particularly here in the US, that's where I focus, of course. Depending on the research, we have north of 70% of employees living paycheck to paycheck. And so when you are literally not sure that you're going to be able to put food on the table next month, of course, that's going to be stressful. That's going to be something that's going to be causing problems for you and how you're feeling and your health. And so when we have employees that are stressed that way, they're 2.5 times more likely to be looking for another job, because they're thinking that maybe a little bit of an increase in pay might solve those problems. One piece of research shows that stressed employees are not productive 11 hours out of the week when they're supposed to be at work.
11 out of 40 hours?
So 25% of the time or more that those people they're stressed, they're looking at their accounts and they're figuring things out. And of course, when there's that stress, it's a huge problem in relationships. If you're struggling with money, it's hard to pay for the healthcare that you need. And so I actually originally called my business Foundation Financial Wellness, because having your money right is the foundation to all other sides of life. So it's a big, big issue. Another piece of research shows that anywhere from 11 to 20% of an employer's total payroll cost is like lost to financial stress. If somebody leaves, which we call turnover, that's kind of the industry word, when an employee turns over, on average, it's about a year's salary in all the costs associated with replacing them in order to get somebody new into that position.
You have any examples of some impact you've seen in a workplace after they've used MoneyRight?
So one of my favorite kind of case studies is a 250 life hospital in kind of a rural area. And so when we rolled out with a MoneyRight program for them, kind of what we do is we start off with a financial stress assessment. Ask all the employees like, hey, where are you at? What are your worries? On a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you? And we get some really interesting numbers back on that, because I can look at what the national research shows, but when I'm actually able to dig into a specific client's needs, it's can be very enlightening. And so for this particular company, I was just looking over the numbers before we started talking. 93% of the employees at this hospital reported being more than somewhat stressed about their finances. 70% of them would have been out of money had they lost their job in less than 3 months. And so there's just lots of ways that this is showing up. And so we rolled up, did a program, and after the first 3 months, we saw a 40% reduction in how much stress they said they were feeling. We saw an increase in how much they were saving, saw an increase in the 401k plan participation. Like there's a lot of different outcomes. It's kind of hard to trace exactly how much impact we have on turnover in a short kind of period of time, because we've not been in business super long, but we do have anecdotal examples of people who were going to leave, but they decided they could make it work and that they wanted to make it work because they understood more how that job worked into their financial life.
Brian, do you aggregate that data and share it with the company? How does that work?
Yeah. So when I'm working with an employer, we will take information and it's all anonymous. Like data is very, like, it's actually one of the foundational morals of my business is that we wanted to be incredibly data safe. We didn't want to have any sales. Like that's one of the issues with a lot of what's out there in financial services is that you might be able to get a free financial plan, but then it's actually just kind of a sales platform for insurance products or other things. And so we don't sell anything to the employees. It's all totally confidential. There's no judgment. We just show them their numbers and help them understand their psychology and help them decide what decisions they want to be making.
Understanding your money psychology. I love that. Walk us through a typical employee's journey with MoneyRight. Like, how does it start? What is that process like?
So when a new client comes on board, so the first thing we do, usually before we even start a new contract with a business, is we want to make sure that those employees are interested in MoneyRight. So we run a survey, ask, how many employees would be interested in a confidential, comprehensive personal financial wellness benefit. And it's always north of 90% of the employees say, yeah, we want this. Like it's something people are asking for. And there's research that shows that, like Morgan Stanley did a study that showed that 90% of employees say they'd be more loyal to their employer if more financial wellness benefits were offered. So that's kind of where we start, is we see how many people are on board, and they always are. And so then if I've got, a rollout date, then I will sometimes do events on the premises of the office, or there'll be virtual events that we do kind of an onboarding period. And so the employees get an email where they just sign up for their free portal. It's free to them. If they want to use it, they can. It's paid for by the employer. And then they just are able to log on to the software. And each month we have a different topic. It's based on the answers from the survey, like what that company's biggest issues were, like what those employees were struggling with. And so each month's a different topic. There's a different tool they get access to that helps them apply whatever that lesson is to their own numbers. And then they can report any progress that they want. Because sometimes the employers want there to be some kind of a challenge involved, or, try to kind of motivate people. They might assign gift cards for the people that have the most participation or something. So it's all custom based on what the culture of the company is. But yeah, so they're just able to log on and have new content that's under a topic, that's different each month. And so each week there's a new exercise for them to do.
Yeah, my wife and I are both public employees. She's a school teacher. So we're both in, I guess, the state employment system, and they've got the Utah retirement system. And that group provides this kind of financial coaching that you're talking about to those who are in the system annually. So you can sign up for a free consultation and talk through what your plans are for retirement and using their products and things. So certainly helpful.
Yeah, having somebody to be accountable to is so valuable. Like if you're able to talk to someone, like that's a tremendous amount of value. I do always caveat this conversation with what I'm noticing a bit of a trend in employment is that there will be services that call themselves financial wellness, so that will use language along those lines that are thinly veiled, short-term loan providers and things like that. And now access to capital can be a really valuable thing for people, that I think that it's very important that employees, like that's why education is the key thing that we do, is we want to help them understand like what the numbers mean and all that. So then they're not as likely to be susceptible to predatory practices that sometimes happen in the industry.
Well, you talked about, the cost of this to an employer. Talk about some of the outcomes that they see, maybe with, you mentioned retention, absenteeism, employee productivity. What have you seen?
So I can kind of answer that in the macro as well as in some specific examples of individuals that I've worked with. But the big thing is that 40% reduction in overall stress. Like when you're not living paycheck to paycheck anymore, like, because that's one of the outcomes is they have a month of income saved. And so now they're not running out of money every month. Like that's one of our first milestones that we work towards. And once we can get them to that point, then that stress level does drop a lot. A big thing we work on is getting out of debt for the employees. And so usually the second or third month in a MoneyRight program is going to be a lesson on how interest works, strategies for, debt payoff and how to prioritize that. And
do you teach them the snowball method?
Yeah, so we teach the snowball method as well as the avalanche method. And so snowball, for the viewers, is where we start with your smallest balance, wherever you owe money, that's the smallest amount, work on getting that paid off as fast as we can. And then you snowball that into, your second smallest account. So then you're kind of getting some progress as you start knocking out those different balances that you owe. The avalanche method it's kind of the opposite thought in some ways, but it's where we start by paying off the debt with the highest interest rate. Level 2 is we help the employees with their budget. We help them figure out a way to allocate money and get their needs taken care of and find some extra money. And employees who go through our kind of cash flow processes on average are able to save somewhere around $1,400 a month by cutting out spending that they are saying that they didn't need to be doing. And so when you take that extra money that they're able to save, we can apply that towards their debt payoff plan. And on average, employees are out of debt just under 3 years sooner than they would have been if they hadn't had a MoneyRight program, and they save over $10,000 in interest costs.
We'll be right back after this short break.
Looking for the best place to grow your business? Welcome to Utah, ranked the #1 state for economic outlook 18 years running. Make the move to join global leaders in advanced manufacturing, aerospace and defense, life sciences and healthcare, software and IT, and financial services. With a young, educated workforce, smart tax incentives, and an unmatched quality of life, Utah is where innovation meets opportunity. Learn more at business.utah.gov.
I'm curious, when you look at consumers' debt, do you kind of carve out like a mortgage or car debt and deal with like credit cards and other loans first, or is it all lumped in together?
I absolutely try to never be pushing any of my values on anybody. My whole goal is to teach them the way that the numbers work. And I will talk about how sometimes paying some interest is an investment. Like, yeah, if you need a car in order to get to work, then that car payment's some of the best money you could ever spend because it's what's letting you make any money in the first place. And another big thing we talk about is with that financial psychology that we emphasize is helping people not feel shame around their debt. A lot of content around personal finance makes people feel really bad for having any debt. And so that sometimes makes them make bad decisions.
I feel like you're talking about Dave Ramsey.
I'm not going to name any names.
He's very anti-debt.
Yes, he is. There's a few different influencers now that'll kind of come out hard against people, and it's quite funny. It makes for good content on TikTok, but I don't think it really helps people very much. Ours is much more compassionate, much more just helping them understand the numbers and then helping them make choices about that. We definitely do lump credit cards as their own kind of debt as opposed to like installment loans and stuff.
Let's talk a little about planning for retirement. I brought it up before, like a 401k. Have you seen, workers have some misperceptions or just not engage that way? Both of our kids are in their 20s. I don't know that they quite get the employer match for contribution for retirement. Do you talk through all those things and what the benefits are?
Yeah, so we will build out all of this content around whatever like that employer's situation is. And so usually it's a 401k. And so we'll look and see what their program is. And that's kind of what we code into the software for that cohort. But at even kind of a higher level, we'll talk about the idea of investing and of, employer sponsored plans and ways to navigate those and how matches work and, the importance of being in the market, because often these 401k plans are opt-in, not opt-out. And so if these people haven't known that it's there, they might not be using it. And the research really shows that the most important thing is to be in the market. There's a lot of little investment choices and things that people can get hung up on, but the most important thing is to get them investing. And the match, once we explain the match, that's just the minimum. They can always be investing more than that as long as they understand things like, the way the plan works and the fees and that type of stuff. Absolutely have to spend a bunch of time on it.
I've heard financial advisors say that if you can, take a cost of living increase and add that amount to your retirement savings each year.
Yeah, we'll run a calculation. The first math that we do with any client is like, hey, based on your trajectory, when could you retire? Like just what you're doing right now, how much do you save? How much do you spend? And then we say, okay, well, if you wanted to retire at, X age, then this is how much you need to be saving. And sometimes it scares the pants off people, but more often than not, it's actually like, oh, that's not as bad as I thought it would be.
Is there a particular employee that you've worked with who just had a story that you found hard to believe, like their experience with money or the situation they were in? I imagine that the space that you're in, you've already highlighted the stress that people feel. And I can only imagine the relief that people could feel once they finally have a handle on their money.
This can get kind of dicey talking about when things get scary with finances, because I actually had an employee, because so sometimes MoneyRight will do one-on-one coaching as a part of the program that we do with an employer. Our core product is just software. It doesn't have any, one-on-one element. And a lot of employees don't seem to want to talk to people about their money. But I did some one-on-ones, and there was a worker who got on and confided in me that they were so worried about their level of debt that they were contemplating just ending their own life to get away from it. And it was very distressing for me to hear. And so, we made sure that everything was okay and healthy. But once everything was in order, we got into the numbers, and the person had, I don't remember exactly what the number was, maybe $40,000 in consumer debt. And they just didn't think, I asked, like, how long do you think it would take you to ever pay that off? And they're like, at least 20 or 30 years. And so we did the math, looked at the income, looked at the budget, moved things around a little bit. And it turned out that they were going to be able to have that balance paid off in like 15 months. And so it just shows how people don't understand the numbers and the way that it works. And so that person's been promoted. They've got a great life. They're engaged to their girlfriend now and everything. So it ended very happy, but it started off a little rocky.
I feel like I've seen recent news stories about consumer debt increasing. I feel like COVID and the increase in interest rates is just, and increasing cost of everything that we buy and consume has just forced people to use more and more debt. Any observations on that?
It's interesting because my statement is that debt is a tool. Like when I have clients or, individuals that have proven that they know what they're doing, that have proven that they have control of their spending, then I'll even say like, hey, I don't really mind you viewing your credit cards in a way as a bit of an emergency fund. Like a lot of people, like the emergency funds are a big thing in kind of the financial space. And I think you absolutely need to have some cash on hand, but like that's literally what credit is for, is to help in those kinds of moments. And so I do think that debt is a very important tool, but I do think we're seeing people having to subsidize their lifestyle with credit cards. And it's very distressing. And so the solution to this is there's two ways to approach when you're struggling to make ends meet. You either spend less or you make more. And so,
or both.
Yeah, or both, to some extent, but you can only save so much. You can only, get to where you're so lean. And so I do find a big part of what I will talk through with people is ways to increase how much they're making. And that's the real solution to problems like that, is to increase your earning capacity.
Well, you've talked about, the MoneyRight software, and we're here in Utah's Silicon Slopes, and the tech industry is doing well. What has it been like to build your company here in Utah in this community with other entrepreneurs, with other, IT and software businesses?
It's been a really great place to get started. Actually, ironically, software companies are my best clients. They tend to have a little bit of a younger workforce. So what I'm teaching can have longer to make their lives better. And they often seem to have a little bit more struggle with turnover. It's a higher skilled position, so it's more expensive to replace. And so that's been a really nice place for me to be having conversations about what MoneyRight could do. But in terms of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, there's a lot of people in Utah who think that they've got an idea, want to start a business. And it's inspiring to see so many people thinking that they can change the world. And that has been a really cool place. A lot of resources, like, stuff like what y'all do with the state is incredibly useful. I've been involved with some accelerators kind of here and there, been able to talk with some mentors because of what's available here. And that's made a big difference for the trajectory of my business. Absolutely.
Talk a little about the conference you're going to go to and the programming that you're planning.
So I'm going to be presenting a workshop at Utah's Women in the Money Conference, which is a financial literacy conference, particularly for women, kind of dealing with issues that specifically women face when it comes to finance. And I'm going to be doing a session called Yoga for Your Wallet, which is a little bit about financial psychology, kind of some stretching your mind about the way you think about money and trying to give people some epiphanies about their money scripts and maybe some ways that their attitude towards money might not be helping them.
Well, 5 years from now, 2030, where do you hope MoneyRight is? What do you hope you can accomplish?
Oh, Pete, I love this question. I'm very excited about the future for MoneyRight. So 5 years is a long time in software land. And so right now, there's me, and then I've got 2 employees. So we're kind of small, but the goal is to get a heck of a lot bigger. I plan on expanding across multiple different kind of segments of the market. Like we talked about technology. I've had a lot of progress in healthcare. That's industry that I'm very passionate about helping, where there's a lot of stress, particularly post-COVID. Things have kind of never really calmed down in the medical world. But the software itself right now it's very good. We have these incredible outcomes, but this is the minimum viable product. I'm actually in the process of doing some fundraising. I'm working on getting into Y Combinator because I want to take, the software right now is maybe 4% of what I'd like it to be able to do in the long run. We want to be the financial infrastructure for people's lives. Like we want MoneyRight to be a person's financial operating system. So we want a mobile app. We want people to log on. We want all their different accounts, synced in there so that our algorithm is able to be looking at all the different variables in their life and giving them the best possible education, the best possible tips every day to help them be making the best decisions possible for what their goals are. So kind of like, imagine a lot of companies use this analogy, but kind of like Duolingo, but for your personal finances, where we're teaching you how the numbers work. We're helping you with good behaviors, helping you make decisions about your spending, and just trying to get that all lined up as much as humanly possible. And there was a study done by Vanguard, which is a really big investment company that's a very big deal. And it was called Advisor Alpha. And it talked about how a financial advisor provides value to their clients. And I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but the lion's share of what Vanguard was saying the value of an advisor is how they helped their clients save and invest more. And that's what MoneyRight is all about. We're here to help people save more, make better choices, and be able to invest more.
Talk to me a little about Y Combinator. What do you hope to gain from that?
So Y Combinator is an interesting one I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but it's kind of like the Harvard of business accelerators. It's down in San Francisco. It's very hard to get into. But once you get in, they invest in your company and they put you through a 3-month, very intense boot camp, helping you with your sales, helping you build out your product, like all that kind of stuff. And for me right now, I need a lot of help. Like I've done sales, but I want better mentorship. I've got a product, but I'd like to meet more talented developers that I could partner with to help build out what we're trying to have be a household name. And so we'll see. I haven't applied yet. I'm kind of trying to get my ducks in a row a little bit, but I'm hoping by this time next year that we'd be graduating from there and that would give us some bigger national leverage than, right now we are mostly focused on Utah because most of my clients are people that I've met personally, but the goal is to take this national. The vision I had when I first had the idea for MoneyRight was I wanted to have 1 million employees on the program. And so we're not going to do that in Utah alone. So we're going to have to go national. And so I'm partnering with big insurance brokerages across the country where they're producers that are already out selling employee health insurance, like benefits and like that. The MoneyRight is something that they'll be able to offer to their clients. They get a little bit of commission, but then the client gets on and the employees get it for free, and it helps them solve their productivity and retention issues. We're trying to partner with associations. Like I'm, talking with the Utah Association of CPAs right now, trying to, work out some kind of a deal with them. There's nobody who doesn't benefit when their people are less stressed about their money.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Y Combinator and how that works. The state has the Startup State Initiative, and on startup.utah.gov, we've built kind of an entrepreneur's journey to help you through each of the steps. We're probably the most frequently visited section of that is how do I fund? How do I capitalize my business? And there's different resources, from public and private partners. But I wonder if our startup state, if Utah could launch its own Y Combinator to kind of fill this need that you're talking about, that would be a cool thing for us to explore.
That connection, the capital absolutely helps. It's entirely necessary. But I think that with software and the way technology is now, that businesses can move very quickly without a whole bunch of money. And so the mentorship, the help with the sales processes, the help with product market fit, those kind of things that aren't maybe quite as expensive, I think you can iterate much faster now. You can have an idea, see if it works, and refine that. And I think that mentors and people who have done that before would be very helpful for fresh founders.
And we have a lot of those people who've done it before in Utah.
Yes, we do.
All right. Final question. What do you find most rewarding or inspiring about being a part of Utah's business community?
I feel like compared to, other friends I have that live in other places in the country, there does seem to be this overwhelmingly entrepreneurial attitude here. A lot of people have got a side hustle. A lot of people are trying to start a business inside their company that they work for. Like they've had some kind of an idea of how to help their existing job out. Like you see people trying to solve problems. And I love that attitude because that's what an entrepreneur is somebody who can add value by solving a problem. And it's very inspiring to see people succeeding all over the place.
Where can people learn more about MoneyRight?
You can go to isyourmoneyright.com. That's our website. We do have an Instagram page as well, which is just at isyourmoneyright. My personal Instagram is at adulting with Brian, but I don't do a lot on social. So the best place would be the website. If you've got questions, you can fill out a form there and we can hop on a call and talk. So people who are individuals that are interested in access to the MoneyRight software, we are rolling out just an individual person could sign up for a monthly subscription. But if you want to introduce us to your HR of your employers, then that's a great place to get started. So we can get you MoneyRight for free if your employer will pay for it. We do workshops, like a quarterly workshop series that we can run. So just literally anywhere people want their people to understand money better, we can help.
We've been speaking with Brian Miller, founder and CEO of MoneyRight. We appreciate you joining us on the podcast.
Thanks so much. This has been awesome.
Here is a quick update from the Economic Opportunity Office for the week of September 14th, 2025. Don't miss the 2025 Apex Symposium on October 16th. Connect with government agencies, large prime contractors, and business resource partners who can help grow your business. Over 25 exhibitors will be on site, some offering exclusive 15-minute one-on-one matchmaking sessions. Reserve your spot early to secure the meetings that matter most. Applications are now open for the Rural Communities Opportunity Grant. The grant empowers eligible communities to take responsibility for economic development planning, projects, and activities, and to manage their unique opportunities. Applications will be accepted until October 31st, 2025. Grant funding is competitive and requires matching funds from awardees. An eligible rural community may receive up to $600,000. To learn more about any of our updates, please visit business.utah.gov.
Thanks to our office marketing communications team for their work on this episode. You can find and follow us on social media at Business Utah. Please feel free to email us with feedback or episode suggestions at business@utah.gov. The Business Elevated podcast is published by the Utah Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. I'm your host, Pete Codella. Thanks for listening.
The views and opinions of podcast guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity or the state of Utah.